Okay, so this is the first person radio session I've been really looking forward to. This is going to be HF Portable Operations Off-Grid, solar powered. I did the Baofeng videos first because everybody has a Baofeng and everyone wants to know how to use them. But realistically, the range on those is just not very good. It's line of sight, you're not going to get past maybe a mile or two unless you have a repeater, and a repeater is somebody else's gear. If you really want to be able to communicate across any reasonable distance without using someone else's hardware, you're going to need something like this set up here. This is my radio bag. The weight on this guy is about 12 pounds. And it contains the battery, a solar panel, the radio itself. It's a nice little shoulder bag. Just goes right over your shoulder, like a little messenger bag, which obviously you can't see. But we are going to get it set up today on HF. I'm also going to deploy the solar panel, but it is windy outside today. So one, I apologize for the wind noise, and two, our solar panel might blow around a little bit. So let's look at what we got here. So this is a Yaesu FT817 is the radio, and I've got it wired in this little bag with a battery and a 50-watt amplifier. Now, the antenna that I prefer to use portable is an end-fed half-wave, and this is the transformer that you use to run a half-wave antenna. I built this myself. You can buy them commercially, but it is a 49-to-1 transformer. I will put some links in the show notes for some resources on how to build them, and I'll probably do a video on building one of these later. The reason why I use these is because the feed point is at one end of the antenna. The middle of the antenna is the part that you need to get high in the air for best performance. So instead of having to hoist a feed point and a bunch of coaxial cable way up in a tree, I can sit on the ground and have the antenna start on the ground, go up into the tree, and then come back down on the other side, and it works like a dipole inverted V. Works very well, but I don't have to hoist anything in the air. And then my antenna itself is right here. So this is a FT140 core for the transformer on the inside. That's the size of it. I would say something this size is good for about 50 watts. This is a FT240 full size, same exact transformer, just a different core, a little bit bigger. I'd say this is good for about 100 watts. And then inside, I just tucked it in here for the trip out. This is a tiny little core. I forget the exact size. I think it's like an FT60. This kit is sold by K6 ARK for about 25 bucks. It's about 5 watts worth. So these are all the exact same antenna transformer, just at different scales. I use this one for the most part. But you can build any of these and they all work basically the same. For my solar panel here, I have a PowerFilm. This is a 13-watt solar panel. And what I love about PowerFilm is they are flexible. And I don't really have to worry about breaking these panels at all. And they're reasonably efficient. They're a little bigger than they need to be, but they work pretty well, except for the fact that it is cloudy and windy AF. So this might not work so hot. But I'll deploy my solar panel. This is my charge controller. I built it myself. I can do another video on that at another point. But my solar panel goes into my charge controller. And let's see what we got for, all right. 13 volts. I need to adjust this. Usually I have this adjusted for my battery, but I was doing some experiments with it using it as an adjustable power supply. So let me just turn my voltage to 14.4, which is the fully charged voltage of my battery pack. And then my current we'll leave it as is. But these are adjustable constant current, constant voltage charge controllers. You can get them on Amazon for like 10 bucks. and I just wired them up in this little Tupperware container because it's a lot more portable in the field. And I have a little screwdriver on a little piece of Velcro so I can adjust it. But whenever I need an adjustable power supply, this is my poor man's adjustable power supply. So, coming back to the radio bag, in here I've got, these are Anderson power poles, are the power plugs. I highly recommend you use Anderson power poles. They're wonderful. I've got a little extension cord in here, in the side. Ooh! My solar panel's blowing. Alright, that'll be fine. I'm not getting full output from my solar panel because I'm covering it up a little bit, but it's better than having it blow away. Alright, so here's my extension cable. The great thing about power poles is that there is no male or female connector on the power poles. They all mate to each other. So these are identical. And one of them just turns 180 degrees and they just plug in like that. So any two power poles will always fit together. I'm going to open up this radio bag and just kind of show you what I've got on the inside here. A buddy of mine helped me build this little case for it. So I've got the FT817, which is a 5-watt HF rig. It also does VHF and UHF through this front panel here. It's only 5 watts, so I have this guy right here, the Mini PA50. This is a 50-watt amplifier that I can turn on or leave off. This right here is a Bioenno Power 4.5 amp hour battery, and I just used like hot glue and little metric bolts and screws and pieces of Kydex and molded this little table here that just holds these all in place and has them all wired up. So it's just a tidy little setup in the field. And then I can just take my microphone and my antenna tuner and my little wall adapter to charge my battery, and I just tuck them in on top there, just stuff them on top of the radio, and it does fine getting out into the field. And below this I've got a spare pen, I've got a little notepad, I've got a spare, this is a VHF antenna. This is my trash VHF antenna as a backup, and then a little throw weight with fishing line as a backup to get my antenna in the tree. Thankfully, I haven't had to use this in a long time. But yeah, that's the setup. Everything's all wired and ready to go. I just have to turn it on, and then I just tuck it back in here. So the radio is plugged in to the solar panel. The charge controller is working here, so yeah, 14.4 volts. I'm gonna plug in the battery to the charger, and on the back here will tell me how much charging current I'm getting. Right now I'm only getting about 100 milliamps, which is probably because the sun is a little bit low in the sky. But yeah, if I angled my solar panel, I might get a little bit more. But in good conditions, this setup will put out maybe half an amp-ish of current. All right, so let's get the antenna up. So this is my antenna. There's two components to it. This is the antenna itself and the ground wire. And this is my throw line. My throw line is just a lead fishing weight, 8 ounces, with the heaviest fishing line I could find, and then a little D-bolt or D-clip on the end here. The antenna, I use 3/8" ring terminals for the end of my antenna, and then I crimp and solder them, and then I put 2 layers of heat shrink over for strain relief. So you see how that's like a nice little arc there and not a sharp corner when that is bending? That helps so that the wire doesn't strain and tear at the end. So I have a short length of heat shrink that goes from like there to like there, and then I have a long one that goes from there all the way to the end, and that helps it to have a nice smooth curve there instead of a sharp 90-degree curve, or a sharp 90-degree point. All right, so The first wire I'm going to lay out is my ground wire. It's colored brown. With a half-wave antenna, you don't need much of a ground. Just, you know, a couple meters even of wire laying on top of the grass is fine. So the ground terminal I wired so it's closest to the BNC so I can remember which one is which. And this is just a little 1/4 bolt. So I put my ring terminal over there, cinch it down, and then I'll lay this ground wire along the ground, as the name would imply. I'll just stretch it out this way. So I'm going to get the positive end of my antenna up in a tree. I can use that one right there. There's that nice little tree branch right there. Be perfect. Or maybe I could go over here and get a little bit more altitude on that one. Either one works. I'm just going to do the short one for now. Boy, it is windy. This is going to be tough. All right. So, a couple things. Notice these are soda beans wire. Oh my gosh. Hold on. You know what? Solar panel's not happening today. I'm putting this guy out. It's just going to end in tears. Trust me, it works. Just not today. God, that must be a 30-mile-an-hour wind at least. It's very breezy. All right. These are wound in a figure 8. So if you wind something in a circle, it wants to kind of twist and kink on this end, and it makes a horrible mess, and it's really difficult to deal with. If you wind it in a figure 8, you get a half a turn clockwise and a half a turn counterclockwise, and they cancel out. So you can just wind it in a figure 8, and you won't have to worry about it kinking up as much. In fact, you don't have to worry about it kinking up at all, really. It's kind of amazing, the difference that it makes. So, something like a Soda Beams wire winder, you can improvise these with like PVC pipe. Like just 2 little hooks on either end and then wrap in a figure 8, that works too. So, I'm just going to clip this end to a belt loop and unspool. The other thing to keep in mind is the worst thing you could do when throwing a line in a tree is have not enough wire spooled out, because what happens is your weight goes into the tree, it runs out of steam, runs out of slack, and then wraps around a tree branch, and you lose it because once you wrap it around a tree branch, you're not getting it unwrapped. So the way you avoid that is you have so much unspooled that it'll always just fall to the ground on the other side, and if it slows down a little bit, it'll just kind of hang dead instead of swinging back and wrapping around a tree branch. So always spool out way more than you need. So I just hook the end of my antenna into the D-ring, the end of my throw line, and then continue to unspool. So a half-wave antenna, by the way, is 1/2 wavelength long at the lowest frequency that you want to use it for. And it will also work at any multiple of 1/2 wavelength for any other frequency. So if I have 1/2 wavelength at 7 megahertz, it will also work at right around 14 megahertz. So if I have a length of wire for the 40 meter band, it'll also work for the 20 meter band, and that's what I have here. So I've got this pre-measured. This wire here that I just hooked up is for 40 meters and also works on 20. And at the end, I just have 2 of those ring terminals, and this is a nylon 3/8 inch nut and bolt. I use these because they're extremely lightweight. They'll clamp those nice 2 ring terminals together, and they're very small, so this will slide through tree branches just great. It won't get tangled or hooked, and it doesn't weigh my line down much. You can buy these at the hardware store. I bought some online that are black. They're a little bit more low vis, but we're just gonna spool out to 40 and 20. If I wanted to do 60, I have another length of wire that goes to this other nut that is long enough to extend it to do 60 meters. And then I have one other length that takes me all the way down to 80. So much I put in the air. I can do 20, 40, 60, or 80 meters. Or, you know, any other frequency you'd want. You just have to, you know, cut it at a certain length and put your little ring terminals in. All right, so antenna is spooled out. Let's throw the line, get it in the air. And my weight is around here somewhere. I think I can find it. Ah, here it is. So, you can just swing it in a little circle and give it a chuck. This is a little bit low, but it should work well enough. If you're doing NVIS, which is the type of propagation you would want, that was not a very good throw. It didn't get over the branch properly. If you're doing NVIS, you kind of want your antenna to be low anyways. And you also want to run at a fairly low frequency. 7 megahertz is about as high as I'd ever want to go. I'd really want to do the 60 meter band at 5 megahertz or the 80 meter band at 3. All right, so getting your line out of a tree. Same principle applies. You don't want it to fall back and swing around. So you just pull the wire until the line goes, until the weight is around whatever branch it's around. And then as soon as it goes over the top of the branch, let it drop. And that way it'll stop it from swinging back. Ooh, this one's a little tough. So I pull until I feel tension, and as soon as that tension releases, I release it. Yeah, see, that came back towards me. If I would have held it tight, it would have wrapped around a branch and I would have lost it in the tree. And that's very embarrassing. All right, so pull the line tight. As soon as you get slack. All right, I'll give it a go one more time. Once you do this a few times, it goes pretty quick. First few times, it's a bit of a disaster. Make sure you're not standing on your line. All right, okay, that should be fine. It's a little higher than I wanted, but it'll work. So there's my weight. It's come down from the tree, hang on eye level. If I wanted to put out more line, I'd just take that weight and I'd run off in the opposite direction and just have this be a V over the top of the tree branch. All right. So I left this hooked so this line didn't, end up in the tree if I threw the weight too far. Now I'll just unhook it and attach it to the positive side of my antenna right here. So positive here into the tree, half a wavelength at the frequency that I'm trying to operate at, negative on the other side, just a couple of meters laying on top of the grass, and then this connects to my radio. I've got my BNC cable velcroed up here. By the way, this double-sided Velcro is wonderful for organizing cables. You can buy a roll of it at Walmart for cheap in the camping section. You can just wrap it around like something like that. It's really handy. So I'll connect my BNC cable, and now I'm just going to go grab my winder and pull the fishing line on the other end until my antenna is hoisted into the air. You don't want any portion of the positive end of your antenna touching the ground. And you want it actually kind of a few feet off of the ground at least. You don't want it too close to the ground because then it grounds your signal and you don't get any signal. So, and it'll mess up your standing wave ratio, your SWR. All right. Okay. It's getting a little bit caught. Something up there. There's just a little bit of friction with the little antenna loop, or sorry, not antenna loop, the little ring terminal or the little carabiner clip sometimes gets snug. So I'm just winding this in a figure 8. I'm just going to let this dangle. That's enough. And then this little strap goes around the outside and hooks in here. And then you can just leave that dangle to tension your antenna. So there I have, it's a little hard to see, I have roughly 20 meters of wire up in the air. So it's a half wavelength on the 40 meter band. All right, so now let's get the radio powered up. So this is the connector for my battery, and then this is a little splitter that I wired up that connects to the amplifier and the radio, and then the battery charger. So I actually physically unplug the battery when I'm not using it, because a lot of radios, this radio included, actually draw a little bit of power even when they're completely off. So if I leave this plugged in, within a couple months the battery will be dead. I leave it completely disconnected, mechanically unplugged, until I need it, and then I plug it in. So let's turn the radio on, see what we can hear. Well, there we go. So that's the 40 meter band, 7.275. I've got a single sideband ham radio signal coming in clear. So that guy's just chatting. Let's scroll around and see what else we can hear. So I'm on the 40 meter band, 7.20 to 7.30. It's actually like 7.125 if I recall is the extra band to 7.3. But it's all in lower sideband, which is a type of AM modulation. I can get into that later. But I just scroll around here to find whatever frequency I'm on. If I was meeting someone here, I would have a particular frequency to meet on. So let's see if we can catch a call sign.
It's weird, but there's only 3 of us in on the net. You know, usually people stop by and say hi. Anyhow,
WH3YJZ. I would have to look that up. I'd look it up on my phone, but I'm recording on my phone. But you could expect on the 40 meter band during the day to talk maybe roughly maybe 600 miles away to maybe 200 miles away. You might get a little bit of what's called skip zone, where you can't talk to people relatively close. You can only talk to people further away. If you go to lower bands, you would expect to have much less skip zone. Until you go too low, and then too low, it just won't work at all. I'll cover HF propagation in a separate video, but this is more or less my portable setup. If it was less windy, I'd have my solar panel deployed. And I've run with this one solar panel. I can run this radio kind of indefinitely on that one solar panel as long as the sun is out, which means that if I were to leave it charging for a couple hours, I could power it all down and then use the radio later. But yeah, that's about it. Let's talk about some of the other stuff I have in the radio kit while we're here. So you saw that in there is a battery, there's the amplifier, there's the radio, there's all the power cords I need to plug it up. I got a power cord extension cord, so if I want to operate in the shade and I want my solar panel to be 10 feet away or 5 feet away in the sun, I can use the extension cord. I have a couple of coaxial cable extension cords, just little BNC extension cords. And usually on one of these, I have a female-to-female BNC adapter, so I can clip them together, and it will clip to the end of that wire over there, the tuner, and that would just let me extend out my antenna a little bit further away from my setup. I got a couple of tent stakes, so I can stake down one end of my antenna. If I want it over a tree or something, I need a little bit of tension. I got bug spray because I hate bugs with a burning passion, and they love me. So I just keep that in there. Let's see, nothing really in there. But the real fun stuff is in these two compartments here. This is like my emergency repair gear. So I have some ring terminals. So if my wire breaks, I can clamp these ring terminals to either side and clip them together with a spare nylon nut that I keep in there. Or if I need to tune to a different frequency, I can calculate where that length is, cut it, and then have a little break in the line that I can put one end on my antenna. I've got a little tiny little Leatherman tool. I mean, this thing is probably like basically free. Just enough that once or twice I can crimp a connector before it breaks. I wouldn't trust it to not break, but it only needs to last once or twice. And these are awesome. I would really recommend you buy these for field work. These are solder butt splices, they can call them. Basically, it's a length of heat shrink tubing with adhesive on either side, and then a little ring, a hollow little ring of solder in the middle. So if you need to join a broken wire, you strip the two ends of the wire, you twist them together, and you slide this over it so that solder is over the middle, and then you heat it up. You can literally do this with a lighter. And then once you melt that solder, you just kind of clamp it down with like your little pliers, and it forms a very strong kind of field expedient, mostly waterproof connection between those two wires. And you can buy like a jillion of these, like a pack of 100 for like $6 on Amazon. Just take the size that you need, because they come in a bunch of different sizes, and stick a couple in a plastic baggie. In this one here, this is a little USB charger. So if I'm using a phone to log contacts or whatever, I can plug this into my battery and charge the phone. I have a couple of little adapters here. This one's USB-C, micro USB, and then I think one of these in here is mini USB. I have a couple of, I have a shortwave receiver that charges with mini USB, so I could charge that. And then I've got more of that Velcro, double-sided Velcro, if I need to tie something up. And then this is great. So these are alligator clips on Anderson power poles. Now with these and this, any source of DC electricity, any battery that I can find that's below like 40 something volts or 36 volts, which is the max voltage of this guy, or above like 2 volts, I can use to charge my battery. I clip these alligator clips to a backup emergency power supply, like one of those little UPSs, a car battery, the charger for an electric shaver, a power tool battery, whatever. I just get positive, negative, plug it into my adjustable voltage regulator, and I can charge my battery. So you can kind of power pirate wherever you are with this, if you have the charger controller. Usually I keep a lighter in here. I believe I flew with this at some time in the past, so I got rid of the lighter, and I think I got rid of my multi-tool at the time. But with this kit, I can operate indefinitely in the field until something breaks that I can't fix. I can charge with solar, I can charge with DC, I can operate on 20, 40, 60, or 80 meter HF band, which is pretty much every frequency of interest. If I plug in the antenna, I could operate VHF, UHF, but it's not ideal for that. And I have 50 watts of power. If I turn on this amplifier, it'll suck my battery down faster, but I can be heard a little better. But if I have good conditions, I can turn that off, and my battery lasts a lot longer. And this radio is very efficient on receive current. So when I'm not transmitting, I'm really being very gentle on my receive current. I'll go into later more about the antenna setup, maybe make a couple contacts, but I'm going to call it a day for today. I don't want to have too long of a video, but this is my portable HF field setup at right around 12 pounds with solar charging and the ability to kind of improvise charging anywhere. And most of it, the radio and the amplifier and the battery are out of the box, but everything else is pretty much hand built. And if you want me to show you how I build it, let me know. I'll make a video. Okay, there was one thing I forgot. So this microphone that I plug in to the side of my radio, this is an add-on. If you have an FT817, I would really recommend you get one of these. What this is a speech compressor. Some radios have a speech compressor built in. It's a really nice feature to have. The FT817 doesn't, and when you're pushing 5 watts, you need all the help you can get. So the average value, or the average volume of speech varies a lot, right? The loud part of your speech is a lot louder than the quieter part of your speech. So when I'm putting out 5 watts of power, at the loudest point of my voice, I'm putting out 5 watts. And then my average power is going to be like 2 watts, maybe. What a speech compressor does is it levels that volume so that the quieter parts of your speech are as loud, nearly, as the louder parts. It doesn't have the same kind of high quality, high fidelity tone to it at the end sometimes, depending on the amount of speech compression. But it makes you much better. It makes you easier to hear in all conditions. So I would recommend getting one of these for any radio that doesn't have speech compression built in. It really helps you when you're running on limited power output. And then it just goes between your microphone and your radio. All right, that's it. Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions or anything else you want to know more about.